Thank you for coming to the book launch of In Conversation. I'm Mediana. You can call me Medi. And I will be your host today. And today we will also have an exciting conversation with our dearest Janice Whyne, the author. Miss Janice is my dear friend and my kakak, which means sister in Bahasa. Yeah. So I will call her Kak Janice.
Biasanya Kak J, hari ini Kak Janice lah. Oh, formal banget. Wow.
I usually just call her Kak J with the initial, but I think she doesn't really like it.
No, it's okay. You can call me Kak J. Kita akrab. We're close.
That's
you can shorten my
only
name.
for me. You guys have to call her with her full name.
No, you don't.
Okay, so Kak Janice, will you please introduce yourself to our audience here?
Who am I? Daughter of Trevor and Carmen, sister to Jeffrey, auntie to Donovan and Gabrielle, cousin to many, friend to some, acquaintance to a few. A Londoner by birth, a Jamaican by heritage. I don't like to be boxed in, give me time, give me room, a product of my environment, yet still trying to swim against the tide. Got my fears, but to quote a friend, trying to feel the fear and do it anyway. I used to like white, now I appreciate red. I never liked coffee, now some would say I'm addicted. I'm not, I promise you. Running for the bus was a no-no, but now I have run 26.2. Usually quiet, but if you hit the right button, you will enjoy surround sound. A lyricist with pages to fill, acquainted with pain, restoring my joy, living a life prescribed, but trying to draw outside the line. Jack of many trades, one day I'll master a few. A contradiction in terms, yet easily read if you have the key. Full of emotions, seen only by a few. A deep thinker, a deep feeler, yet content to go with the flow. If it matters, I'll speak. If it doesn't, I won't. Love the spontaneous, but need a rhythm, a framework to scaffold this journey I'm on. Seeking my identity, longing to be known, keeping at arm's length, but open to be drawn close. A narrative still unfolding, unsure of myself, but sure of him, a work in progress his promise to complete, a unique expression of his love, a vessel for his service, trying to live his truth. To use a turn of phrase of my people, I mean that, or at least in part. Who am I? As a poet, I thought, what better way to try and introduce myself than a poem? And I just want to add my thanks again for just coming to enjoy this conversation with me. Now, I'm going to read 3 of the shortest poems in the book, give you a little taster, whet your appetite, hopefully. And then I know that Medi's got some questions, so we're going to interchange some questions and poetry, and hopefully be engaged in a cool conversation. So I'm going to read one now called Oh Crumbs. Oh Crumbs. Crumbs adorning the corners of my mouth, flaky deliciousness scattered across my chest. If anyone saw me, they'd think I'm a disgrace. But in this moment, I don't care. There must surely be a time and place when you can just let the crumbs fall. That was actually because there was a croissant flakes on my chest, and that's how that came about. But you know what I mean? Sometimes it's like, oh, come on, just let the crumbs fall. Soulmates the Fallacy. I blame Disney. The typecast fairy tales, casting spells on the already hypnotized into thinking that love is a wish upon a star, as opposed to the clothes on the floor, the toothpaste squeezed in the middle, the endless streams of mindless trivia, the morning breath kisses and late night cookies, the late stage bare belly, the overcooked dinners, the peeling wallpaper and exposed wiring, the cupboards left open, the loo roll on backwards, the snoring concerti and hair confetti, the left with no covers and sandpaper rubs, master mask confabs, the ivy of indifference, the whodunit mysteries, the I feel good, lacking sugar and spice, and the turning out of the lights. Your dreams come true. Soulmates the Fallacy. Okay, the last short one, my secret place. Then in fact, I might have lost the place. Hold on 1 minute. You know when you put in all your papers and then suddenly, here it is, the paper drops out. Here we go, my secret place. And this is what we call After Virginia Woolf, because it's written based on a line from something she said, and the line was, my brain hums with scraps of poetry and madness. Lost in desert times, when my dwelling place is my brain and oasis waits. The whisper hums to a crescendo, harmonizing with each synapsis, transforming scraps into morsels of meaning, delicacies of understanding. Like osmosis, poetry moves us towards and beyond madness. My secret place. Over to some questions from Mindy.
Wow. Thank you for whetting our appetite with those. And now we will start the conversation.
We already started though.
Okay. Yes, well, you can enjoy your snacks. When people hear in conversation, they might think about an interview or even a story, but not poetry, I think, yeah. So could you explain why you choose this title for your book?
So when I decided that I was going to write a poetry book and I started to look at the list of poems that I had, I found that most of them in the last couple of years have been prompted by something someone had said while we were chatting, or something that I heard via media in some way, or it was me responding to a significant event that happened. And so, you know, over the last 2 years, that seems to be how most of my poems have come about. And so, to be honest, like, In Conversation is literally what this book is and what it came out of, and also what I'm inviting any of the readers to come into a conversation with me, with the poems, with the topics, or however it meets you, because I might have a way of thinking, I'm writing these poems to mean this, but you, the reader, it might say something completely different to you, so inviting you also into the conversation with these poems.
Yeah. So In Conversation was born from the philosophy that each poem can speak directly to the reader and invite the reader into a dialogue. Is there one such specific event or dialogue event that inspired you, and would you share it with us?
Yeah, sure. The event that comes to mind demanded, to be honest, rather than inspired me into dialogue. The murder of George Floyd in May 2020 demanded a response from me. I, as I'm sure very many people were, I was rocked by it. And 2 days after his death, the word humanity began to ring around and around in my head, and until I had to start writing something down. So I wrote and recorded a poem with the same name, and I posted it on my socials, and it got quite a lot of response, which to me said it articulated something that was resonating with a number of people. And one such response, one comment said, I've run out of words. And that sentence, and this was from another person of color, and they just said, I've run out of words. And that hit me, right? That was their response. And then that became ringing around in my head, and then I ended up writing another poem based around that sentence, I've run out of words. So writing humanity for me was firstly my need to grapple with this horrific thing, this horrific act, right, that had happened, perpetuated on a person who looked like me. And poetry was one of my ways of doing that, right? Posting it on social media was partly, to be honest, just because I had to do something, and it was also me adding my voice to the collective cry and grief of my people. But it was also, even though I don't know if I really set out to do that, it's just the way the poem came out, but it became also a challenge and an invitation for us as humans to examine ourselves and just think about what we are actually doing to one another, because there's literally a line in there that says, humanity, humanity, wherefore art you humanity? And I think it's a question that needed to be asked, and sometimes we really need to examine ourselves and just say, what are we doing, you know? So yeah, that's one such event. Two, well actually three poems ended up coming out of trying to respond to that horrific thing.
Yeah, I think each person needs to take a moment to ponder and reflect on things that happen in our world. In a digital age full of information exposure, we could easily skip important things and get carried away. So I think this kind of moment to ponder and then to actually absorb things into our mind, our soul, and then get it out into a poem. That is something very heartwarming.
Yeah, definitely, man. I mean, like, even if you just consider the last 2.5 to 3 years, right, of COVID, right, there's been so much loss, grief, and so much more that has happened. And I don't know about you, but I don't actually think that many of us have actually even begun to process some of what was going on during that time. And I actually think, to be honest, some of the long-lasting effects, we're probably not going to know about for another 2-3 years' time, kind of the impact that had on many of us. And, you know, with many places in the world moving into the new normal, and that's right, because at some point we have to move into this new normal, but it can be, we can run the risk of just completely just jumping back into everything and not really, as you use the word, absorbing or taking in what happened, how has that impacted me. And you know, I think it's really important for us to take the moment. For me, poetry often seems to be the way that I respond, or I try to filter certain things, and for some of you it might be the same, or just writing things down, or for some it might be going for a walk, whatever it is. But it's important that we take the moment when some of these things happen in our lives, not even just globally, but like personally, and find a way to take that moment and take it in, and don't just kind of run into the next thing, because it's important for our well-being. Because this stuff that happens to us is in there. It doesn't just magically evaporate, right? It stays in there until we acknowledge it in some way. So I think that's really important.
Yes. And now I think it's about the time we hear some more of your poems.
Sure. Before I go into that, welcome to some of you else who've just come and joined us. Thank you for joining in the conversation. Really glad that you're here. Awesome. So I'm actually going to start this section of poetry with that poem, Run Out of Words, that I said I wrote in response to that comment that person said. I've run out of words. Is it any wonder when new cycle after new cycle I'm hearing on repeat of the passing of another loved one at the hands of the Almighty? Not the Almighty, but the almighty cocktail of 2 for 1s. Systemic and institutional, hatred and oppression, suppression and subjugation, discrimination and exclusion. That's just the way it is. I've run out of words to express my condolences, expel my frustration, explain my position. I've run out of words to politely respond to my well-meaning friends, to support their grief as they begin their awakening, to filter the facts into a drive-through menu. Would you like fries and a drink with that? I've run out of words to encourage myself that a change is gonna come, much less encourage a brother or a sister to keep the faith, stay strong, and hold on just a little while longer. I had hoped that the following words had run their course and had been archived in the annals of Black history. You would have to work twice as hard as your white counterparts. You would have to be twice as good as they are. Can you remember where you were when you heard those words? They may not have been precisely those words, but if you're of a certain generation, you will have heard a version of those words. I naively hoped my niece and nephew would need the talk. But as the times go by, all these perilous times, I'm becoming resigned to the facts I must face, that those words may never have a full stop. I've run out of words to finish this piece. I'm all out of words, so it's time to use yours. I'm run out of words. I talked to Bagi. yeah. If you want to respond, you can. In the poetry community as well, they often, if something really hits you, they snap their fingers and stuff. So yes, this is a live conversation. So if you want to respond, yeah, please do. Thank you, thank you. I touched on the fact that, you know, in this time, right, we have had so much loss as well. And there's a piece that I wrote called Encased in a Tear. And actually, it's something I wrote when Medi's father, I'm getting a bit emotional now. Wow. Whew. Passed away last year. Yeah, and there is so much that can be encased in a tear, so I'm going to read that for you now. Encased in a tear, heartaches, losses, and the unspoken of a multitude, falling from lids when lips are sealed. Each drop holding space for inarticulate utterings, indecipherable by their sound, unrecorded in the lexicon, bereft of grammar and syntax, the language of millions. Translation unnecessary, universally understood, encased in a tear. And I don't know about you, my family, we unfortunately had a lot of loss during the last 3 years. And I wrote this piece called Porous. Yeah, I'm just going to read it for you. And you know, I don't know what happened to you guys in the last couple of years, so maybe there'll be things that speak to you as well. I'm carrying loss in my bones. It is seeping out of every pore as if I've eaten too much of the king of fruits, emitting a fragrance recognized by only the discerning. Some of it is generational, some from this present age, others are so current I can feel them in the air. I'm carrying loss in my veins, pumping parallel to the life-giving blood circulating my being, siphoning my oxygen when I least expect it, leaving me breathless. If I were a tree cut down, my exposed inner rings would chronicle the losses. Even losses I'd forgotten would still bear witness. Rooted deep in my subconscious, unearthed by remembrance, triggered by people, places and things, then the fresh sap of loss rises to the surface. I'm carrying loss in my bones. I want to put it down, but it would seem it's to be my forever friend. If only I could shake it off as easily as I once shook all 219 of the locks on my head. But as interlocked as the locks on my head, so is the loss in my 206 bones. Soaked up like a sponge and stored in their warehouse, moving through my bloodstream to each moving part. Maybe it will be that way until death do us part. Chorus. Thank you. Now, even though there has been a lot of loss and stuff, I want to say that I still believe in hope. And I'm going to read a poem called Hope Springs, and then I know that Medi's got a few more questions for me as well. Okay. Hope springs eternal, the poet Pope said. But what about when it doesn't? When the third strand has been broken, now left empty-handed, red, raw marks that only remnants of what you clung desperately to hold on to. Streams in the wastelands yet to spring forth. Peace be still, yet to be uttered. The darkest hour denying the dawn. What then? Do as the psalmist and let your lament be lifted aloud. Allow your soul to pour out its sorrow. Suppress not your confusion and disappointment. For there is a time to mourn and a time to rejoice. The pathway between them awash with tears, collected in a bottle, recorded in a book. Will they wash away the ashes to be exchanged for beauty? Become the still waters to which I am led? Will I find a place where my soul is restored? I hope so. Because even though I may not be able to say hope springs eternal, I choose to believe that hope can rise again. that the yet I, but still I will, could be the song in my heart and the declaration on my lips. For without hope, my journey cannot continue, a journey which in actuality may be the one towards hope. Hope springs. Thank you, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing so personally with us. It feels very personal for me as well. And staying with the personal, I would think all writers dream of having their book launch at an event like Ubud Writers and Readers Festival. So I think people here who are writers themselves, they must agree with me. So what does it mean to you to have your book launch at international event like Ubud Writers and Readers Festival?
Well, I'm going to have to try and make that answer very short. I'll try my best. I've been on a journey of rediscovering my creativity for around the last 6 years. Starting in 2016, with me being in the fair and doing it anyway and participating in my first open mic at the Poetry Cafe in London. After that, I started kind of blogging again, started posting some bits of poetry online, and then in 2018, I got to come to the Ubud Writers Readers Festival. I'd heard about it, but I hadn't got to it until then, and it really fed my hungry creative soul, right? And there was a poetry slam, and once again, I felt the fear, and you know, a bigger stage, international audience, my heart was beating out of my chest, like, you know, when they called my name. And I shared a poem called Just Be, which I'd actually written after one of the sessions that year of the festival. And so this was like a personal win for me. Like for myself, it was another milestone in me, putting myself out there. And you know what, some people even came up to me afterwards and talked about how the poem connected with them, which was really humbling and encouraging. And then in 2019, 3 years ago, the festival having become a must for me when I'm in Indonesia. Oh, yeah, I forgot to say, I've been living in Indonesia for almost 12 years, based in Jakarta. So all that time I've heard about the festival. So 2019 I came and enjoyed the festival, and I participated in the poetry slam, and I came second or first runner-up as they called it, like, which was like, whoa, like, you know, crazy, mind-blowing, humbling and stuff. And now here I am in 2022, having my first poetry book launch at the Ubud Writers Festival, and in this book are some of the poems that either got written during the festival or got shared during the festival. So it's just like, it's kind of coming full circle, and I am so grateful, and just like, yeah, it's just amazing, and amazing to be sharing this with you lovely people, in conversations with this book as well. So yeah, that's kind of what it means, yeah.
Yes, I remember 2019 when KJ won the awards, and then we all like, wow! That's kind of like achievements and also like acknowledgement for yourself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It was like an achievement because, you know, it can be scary putting yourself out there and your words, because as a poet, right, even though I would say the voice in my poems is not always mine, so say like the piece Humanity that I shared, that I talked about earlier on, I honestly think that there was part of a collective response coming out in that poem, so some of what I was saying was not just about me. But as a poet or a writer, you always, I think, have to have something personal of yourself in that. So you're putting yourself out there. It's quite vulnerable to put yourself up on a stage and, you know, share your words and all of that kind of stuff. And so to actually, to be at the festival and to go up there, my heart was still beating, but maybe not as much, and I knew some people and all that kind of stuff. And then to come first runner-up was like, you know, kind of like really, really crazy. And yeah, so it's a significant milestone and encouragement. And like I said, I'm now here with you lovely people, launching my first poetry book in conversation. So yeah, it's great. Thank you.
Okay, so when I hear KJ's stories, maybe I will think like, so I can just start writing something and then join a competition and then become a winner and then boom, have your book launch here. But maybe that's not a journey for everyone, right? So for all the beginners out there, they may be wondering if they really can have this kind of career. I mean, if they are beginners, they may be wondering, should I take this path as a writer, or should I just do it my profession traditional things? What is your advice for them?
Well, to be honest, I don't think there's like a, it's not like some clothes, a one size fits all, right? So I don't think there's like a one answer fits all. And you sign off by saying, well, I think maybe I should just write. And to be honest, one of the things would be just write. Years ago, and absolutely, this is like, I mentioned that I'm on a journey of rediscovering my creative self. Because in some ways, my creative self, I don't want to say it was closed up, but it wasn't necessarily something that was encouraged and stuff when I was younger. And so you do the path that seems like the most sensible path, or the one that, maybe parents or whoever feels most trusted. So it was kind of like, coming back to my creativity in these last 6 years, but I had this like long distance writing course that I sent off for, spent my good money and never actually did the course. But in one of the books that I read, one of the very first chapters, it says, people are always asking, how can you become a writer? And they're looking for this like really sage advice, that's going to give them the answer. And it basically said, to me, affix your bum to the seat and write, right? Do you know what I mean? It's like, some of that is just showing up. And I think that if you feel that you are a writer, and I mean, me myself, I only started saying that I'm a writer in the last 3 years, because up until then I was like, I'm a writer in progress, I'm a writer in progress. It's like I wasn't willing or confident enough to own, like saying I'm a writer or I'm a poet, right? But I think that if you're someone who feels like you just have to write, like, has anyone seen Sister Act? Like the film Sister Act? Like there's a scene in it where Whoopi Goldberg's character says to Lauren Hill, I can't remember her name, her character is like, that there's this book from Rilke, and it's basically saying, if you get up in the morning, or if you're sitting somewhere and you just feel like you have to write, you are a writer. And so some of that is just write. And then also, feel the fear and do it anyway. You don't necessarily have to go to a poetry slam and put yourself out there, but if you want to, hey, go for it. Do the bungee jump and like, just go for it. But, share it with a friend. Share it with somebody who you feel you can trust, who is not going to crush your spirit, right? You can share your vulnerability with them. I have some amazing friends who, like when I was doing this book, I sent them the draft, and that was a big thing, but I knew, I called them my tribe, I could trust them with my words. I could also trust them to be honest, but I could trust them with my words. So, just write. Write for yourself. It doesn't have to be shared with anyone, but then if you want to, share it with a friend, someone you can trust, and then maybe take another step. It's a step by step. It's a progress thing. So, I think that would be kind of what I would say here.
I definitely agree with that. I myself write for myself as well.
and that's a good thing to do. Earlier on we were talking about taking a moment, right? And if that's one of the ways in which you can take a moment and reflect and just, sometimes we just need to get stuff out of our head. Get stuff out of our kind of emotional basement, So if writing is the thing that does for you, no one else has to see it. It's just a space for you to just put it on a page and it's acknowledged. Because I think scientists talk about, sometimes writing things, literally writing things down, there's something about that makes it concrete, and then at least it's acknowledged somewhere. And it doesn't have to necessarily be with anyone else.
Yes, exactly. And I also agree. Just right. I think I will make it as my word for today. Just right.
Just right.
Okay. So I think now you want to share some more of your poems.
I do.
We have several people who just come in, so they can hear as well.
Sure. Let me just find it. Hold 1 minute. Fill the gap, maybe.
Okay, for everyone who just come, so this is In Conversation book launch. In Conversation itself is kind of dialogue, but between poems, and let the poems start talking to us. So now we can have a bit tester for the poems. Kak J will read some of them.
I'm there. So I mentioned that at that first poetry slam at Ubud Writers Festival that I shared a poem called Just Be. So I'm going to read that for you and then go on to a couple of others. Just be. That is all that is required of you. Just be. The you that you were created to be. Just be. That is the extent of your exertion to fulfill no expectations, but that which expects you to just be. At peace with your inner and outer, aware of the space you are currently occupying, engaged in the process of this thing called life, just be. Present in the moment, moving forward, not backward, convinced of the choices to be made and the consequences that will follow, just be. Nothing more, nothing less, nothing added, nothing taken away. The best version of yourself in this ongoing story. Guess how we're going to end? Everybody with me? Just be. So just be. I don't know about you, sometimes we just need a space to be, man, you know? It's like, please, just let us be. Hey, so I shared in that first poem that, who am I? That I am a Jamaican by birthright, by heritage, in my soul. So I feel like I should share a piece that actually connects with that. And for Jamaican Independence Day a couple of years ago, I wrote an acrostic poem. So if you actually see it written down, it's an acrostic called Emancipation. And it uses a line from the late great Marcus Garvey, who is one of Jamaica's national heroes, who was very much for the unification of all black people and equality and lots of other stuff. If you look him up, you can see that. So I'm going to share that with you. Oh, and this image is done by my cousin, and you've got some images in the book as well, and I think it goes really well with this. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. Marcus Garvey's instructions regarding mind control. Allowing others to rule our minds means body and soul will follow. No shackles may adorn our person, but enslavement will be our living shroud. Control of our minds is a precious commodity, not to be traded on the open market. Investing in yourself requires knowing your worth, perceiving your greatness, cherishing your pearls. Or those who applaud you may not truly appreciate you. Take note of who you allow into your circumference. Not any and anybody should speak into your life. In peacetime and war, the mind is a battlefield, defending itself from cradle to the grave. Once you cry freedom, the lines have been drawn. None but ourselves can free our minds. Emancipation. So, I want to share a piece called Permission Granted. And this is the piece that got me first runner-up in 2019. So I'm going to share that. And actually, I just want to tell you a little bit of the story behind this. So I also do kind of like Thursday thoughts every now and then on Instagram. Not necessarily every week, I kind of drop off. But about maybe 3 years ago now, 3-4 years ago, I had met up with a friend in Singapore. Well, we happened to both be in Singapore at the time. In Singapore, and this friend and her family were going through some horrific things, like truly horrific. And we were chatting, and she was sharing with me how she was feeling as if, you know, she's a person of faith. I am also, and she was sharing about how she feels as if she needs to, like, you know, just keep trusting in the Creator, and, you know, people are encouraging her to not, you know, feel down and to, you know, not be over sad about it and stuff. And I was like, no. There is a time to mourn, and what you're going through is hard, right? You know, and it even says in the Holy Book, you know, we're supposed to mourn with those who mourn and all that kind of thing. And so later on, I'm sitting in a McDonald's, and this is going round and round in my head, and I think because I was also so angry that people were making her feel bad for like expressing her stress and her sadness and her concern. And so I just did like this Thursday thought called Permission Granted, and I just jumped on and did it. So anyway, we're coming up to the Urban Writers Festival, and I'm saying to my cousin, oh, I really want to try and go into the poetry style again. I have to try and figure out what poem I want to share. She goes, oh, what about that poem, Permission Granted? I was like, what poem, Permission Granted? She's like, you know, you did it. I was like, that wasn't a poem, it was a Thursday thought. She was like, no, it sounded like a poem to me. And I was like, okay. So I went back and I listened to the Thursday thought. And I thought, okay, it's not a poem, but let me try and take what I said in that and see if I can build it into a poem. So a number of lines that were in that Thursday thought ended up in the poem, as well as lots of other stuff. And so I'm going to share that with you now. Right. Oh, and by the way, if any of you decide to get the book, it's not a pressure, but just say this. It says in brackets, this is a poem to be read aloud. You know, because sometimes, man, we need to say these things to ourselves aloud, especially because sometimes other people might not say it for us. Okay. Permission granted. Permission to what? To not take the lemons and make lemonade. Permission to not be okay. Permission to give my best foot a rest and not put it forward. Permission granted to not put on my happy face. Allow me to be sad. Sad in itself is not bad. Sad is one of the beautiful emotions at our disposal, given to us to express how we feel at any given moment. It is natural to feel sad sometimes. So, permission granted to not turn my frown upside down. Permission granted to not find the lesson in every circumstance. Permission to say, this sucks. Not everything has good in it. There is not always a teachable moment. Sometimes things just suck. Permission granted to not join you on the mountaintop. Times in the valley can be just as valuable, just as valid. Maybe the valley is the place where I'll be restored. The safe place where my tears can freely flow for the losses felt. The place where the unsaid can finally be said. Maybe I don't need to see things from another perspective. I can see them just fine from down here. Permission granted to not move on. Let me be, let me process. Let me figure out how to live another day with this thing forever a part of my story. There are some things in life that cannot be erased if they never existed. Your well-intentioned encouragements and silver-tongued suggestions could be more about you than about me. Currently on pause, you want me on fast forward, but give me time, and I'll be the one to press play again. Permission granted. From who? From me to me. From me to you. From you to me. Permission granted.
Conversation, do you agree? Yes. So I find Kak J's poems have resonance with daily lives. So I really love her creativity, and there is also some poems in Bahasa, right? So I can see that there are several people here from Indonesia and understand Bahasa. Could you raise your hand, please? Bahasa? Yeah, okay. So Kak J herself already stays in Indonesia for more than 10 years. So she has lots of friends, Indonesian friends. One of them is me. Yes. And she also has several poems written in Bahasa. So, would you share with us one or
Oh, okay. I wasn't prepared for that. That's okay though. Alright, I'll share one. And as Med said, so if you are interested in the book, there's actually a version that's got some of them, more of them translated. So the original is just purely in English. See, look, I just switched my Bahasa, right? And that, but there's also, so there's a book that's just got English in it, and then there's a book that's got about 30 of the poems in Bahasa Indonesia, as well as the full English version. So you can find them in Periplas and English, so you can choose which one you want. The one that has two Bahasa is Tika. So, right. Mana ya? Mungkin Siapakah Aku ya? I started with Who Am I? So I might as well go with Siapakah Aku as well. And then after that, maybe we have a little time for questions, maybe? You think we still got a little bit of time for questions?
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
Or we can have an open question. If there is any of you who wants to ask, maybe we can still have a space for one or two questions.
Okay, I've got it. Now let's hope I don't get gugup ya dengan bahasanya. And I have to say, okay, right? So bahasa is not my bahasa ibu, but I did have my friends check the bahasa, so hopefully it's okay. I trust them. I do trust them. Siapakah aku? Sebuah pertanyaan panjang lebar yang ditanyakan selama bertahun-tahun. Sampai sekarang ini masih belum terjawab juga. Dari manakah jawabannya akan datang? Kapankah aku akan benar tahu diriku sendiri? Kapankah aku jadi senang dengan diriku sendiri? Kapankah aku akan berhenti mencari tahu diriku melalui mata, mulut, dan kata orang lain? Udah waktunya aku tak ragu-ragu lagi. Udah waktunya aku nggak kurang percaya diri lagi. Udah waktunya tidak bertanya-tanya lagi. Siapakah aku? Aku anak tercinta dari seorang bapak ibu yang tak lelah. Aku adalah harapan beribu-ribuan jiwa yang meninggal saat dalam perjalanan. Aku adalah kemenangan dari mereka yang berjuang untuk masa depan yang tak sempat mereka nikmati. Aku adalah sebuah jawaban dari pertanyaan orang lain. Aku adalah sebuah pintu masuk untuk orang yang mengikuti dari belakang. Aku yang mengambil langkah demi langkah, biar jejak kakinya menjadi tanda bahwa sudah ada yang bisa sampai sini. Mungkin saat ini sudah cukuplah untuk mengenalku. Siapakah aku?
Is there any from the audience? Do you have questions? Yeah?
I have a question. Do you write in Bahasa or English and then translate, or the other way around? How do you write as a writer who writes in English?
For the Indonesian poems, I wrote straight in Bahasa. So I just wrote straight in Bahasa, and then basically, normally, especially because, like, for example, to go in the book, then I would share it with my friend Medi or with Nonna, who's over there, Nonna. And Nonna has done a number of translations for me with this book as well, because there was no way I could do all of them on my own. My head would explode. But in terms of if I write, like Siapakah Aku, langsung dalam bahasa. Because I just think both languages are very different, you know, and you can't just, so even when you're thinking about trying to translate, you know, we had lots of conversations when Nonna and some other friends were helping me to translate, was to explain some of the nuances or the cultural things for them to then be able to think, okay, what represents that in Bahasa Indonesia? You know, it wasn't, even though Uncle Google or Tante Google can help us, right? You know, it's not just put it in Google and like that, because it doesn't always translate. So for me, if I'm writing in, I want to write Bahasa, langsung Bahasa aja. I just do that way. I think it then comes out more naturally. Yeah, and I just use what I know and hope to pour it into the page and then go and edit it afterwards and try and make it better, hopefully. Terima kasih. Gosh, the biggest fear in becoming a writer, yes, and feel the fear of me anyway. Well, you know, like I think like lots of people, right? I had some validation and esteem issues when I was younger. And I think these are things that I feel I have grown out of. But you know, sometimes when we have things, whatever they are, that kind of grab us when we're younger or at a stage, every now and then, especially if we're feeling a bit tired or weak or life is going a bit crazy, they try to keep up again. And so when I was younger, it was very important for me to be validated by people. And so actually, but sometimes I would therefore not do things for fear that I wouldn't get it right and I wouldn't do it right, or you know, I wouldn't do it the way that they wanted it to be done. And so I think as a writer, then you're putting yourself on a pain. Now, as I said, you know, I really feel grateful that I'm far, far, far from that. That doesn't have a hold on me. But still, when you get up and you share your words, because it is part of you, even as though when I said sometimes the poems are not always my voice, to actually do that, because then if maybe someone doesn't like the poem, or someone doesn't understand the poem, or they're critiquing, if you're not careful, you really see that as a personal thing on you, when it isn't really. It's because the poems, what we write, it speaks to people in different ways. And so not everybody will get what you're saying, or it won't always resonate with them in the same way. So I had to be in a place where it's like, for me, So writing this book for me, I say in the introduction, it's a personal milestone. And for me, because I said years ago, it's so funny, even though I didn't know I was going to write a poetry book, in like 2009, yeah, when I hadn't really started this journey of rediscovery, I wrote on my blog that I'm a writer in progress and I'm sure that I have at least one book in me. So even though I was not really confident about that life, I said that. And at this stage, I was like, I am fulfilling a commitment to myself. So even if nobody likes it, though of course I hope somebody likes it, right? But even if nobody likes it, this is me fulfilling a commitment to myself. But there's still always that little bit of a, like, will anyone turn up today? Or, oh, will anyone get the book? Or, but, you know, the fact is I think they're a part of it. You know, because sometimes that fear now, it's not even to say that I'm really paralyzed by it, but it's just, it's that little thing that comes up and you just speak to yourself, it's like, I'm good, man. I did this for me. And I also very much believe in the principle of the one. So for me, if one person, honestly, if only one person reads something and it touches them, I'm good. I've done what I needed to do as far as I'm concerned, right? And you know, and that's something that I try to re-encourage myself with, because that fear, that kind of insecurity sometimes, like you know, when the book went live before, like so the English publication went live on Amazon, right? And like if I wasn't careful, I'd be looking, doing all my book, doing all my book. And I was like, no, Janice, you said. Just doing the book was already a success, right? You know, and then it's like, it's all good after that. So yeah, it's been a journey, it's been a process of, yeah, just really affirming my own identity, maybe, even though I hadn't written permission granted, giving permission to myself and also having other people permission to myself to just be, basically, you know? So, sorry, that was a bit of a long answer to your question, but hopefully it answered it.
Good. Okay, thank you for the question.
Can I ask one question?
Oh,
In fact, ownernya.
So I don't like it, I love it, it's great. And I'm really interested by the little musical samples. So I only picked up what Bagi Janice, but there are a few soul and disco ones. And tell us about your relationship with music and between song and poetry and stuff.
Sure. Okay, so Jamaica by heritage, grew up in a Black Pentecostal church, and when you grow up in a Black Pentecostal church, man, you just sing, right? And it's so interesting to me, like, you know, as I got older and been in different church scenarios, sometimes people are like, oh, can you teach me how to sing harmonies? And I don't know how to teach you to sing harmonies, you just sing them, right? Because that was my experience when you grew up. So music and musicality is a deep part of my heritage, my culture, etc. And it's also something that I used to do and do sometimes a lot as well. It's one of the ways that I most connect, you know what I mean, with the creator and also just enjoy life. And I do things like dance breaks at home, but I also make the guys in the office do dance breaks as well. So for me, music and poetry, it is all about that creative way of being able to express things. There are things that can be expressed in music that actually we can't always express in our own words, or sometimes even an instrumental piece of music. It's like it is resonating with where you are. You know, there's music that you really meets you when you're sad, music that when you're happy, music and all that kind of stuff. And so in this particular thing with some of the songs, so that's just the way it is. Now, right now I'm having a mind blank as to who wrote that song. But when I looked back, it just kind of naturally evolved while I was writing that poem, because it was like, you know, I was talking about systemic oppression and, you know, you can feel like that's just the way it is. You know, this is the world we're in. And so I looked up the song itself, and if you look at the lyrics of the words, it is reflecting on the condition of stuff, mostly in America. But what it's trying to say is that it shouldn't be the way it is. We shouldn't be accepting this. We shouldn't be just thinking this is how things are, right? And so I think the particular pieces, it just kind of came out very naturally, and maybe because it's just in there. I feel like music is in my DNA, culturally. And obviously with songs like Bob Marley, because he quoted Marcus Garvey. And so when I was writing this, it was just the first thing that came out, and not to paint yourself, you know, to stay with it. And it felt like, you can't not sing that line, you know? Because there is a power in music. Because even when we don't understand words, like last night at the Poetry Slam, a couple of people were doing a set, and they sang in Bahasa Indonesia, and the host, Faye, said, I don't understand Bahasa Indonesia, but I felt it. You know, I felt it, and I think music can do that in the same way that written poetry can do that as well. So, yeah.
Okay, I think we have to wrap things up here. And thank you for all of your time and participation, and also for Janice to share her inspiration with us, and for the audience. via social media. We have it here. She mostly on her Instagram, JJ's Muse, and also Facebook and YouTube. And you can also search hashtag JJ's Muse to find her content. And then, if you are as interested as I am in her poems, I already have one of her books with autograph in it. So you can also purchase a copy today at the festival. We have from the very first. And then you can also have book signing here after the launch directly. And KJ will still around in this festival for the next 3 or 4 days ahead. Of course, you can grab her aside and could you please sign my book? And then you can also buy them at Amazon. They have Kindle and paperback edition.
Yeah, so for those of you that are like more into ebooks, if you go to Amazon.com, you can get that there. It's only the English version, but yeah, you can get that there as well.
And also at Book Depository.
Yes, the Book Depository too. Honestly, it feels so exciting every time I see these things. It's like, oh my gosh!
Okay, so I think it's a wrap for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for your time and participation.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of you. Thank you. Oh, can I do what I see people do? I'm going to try and do a selfie with everyone in it. Hold on.
Oh.
I see artists do this. Let me try and see if I can do it.